Before we dive into this dark, true story, hit that subscribe button, leave a like, and tell us what you'd do if redemption came with the price. Because what you're about to hear will test your idea of forgiveness. The sirens cut through the midnight silence of South Central Los Angeles. Flashing red and blue lights painted the cracked walls of the El Camino apartments, a place where gunshots echoed louder than prayers. Lying on the wet concrete was the body of a young man, barely 18, a red bandana still clenched in his fist. Detective Marcus Hale crouched beside the body. His flashlight traced the fresh graffiti on the wall. Blood never lies. It wasn't just a message, it was a declaration of war. The victim, Jamal Lil J. Carter, was the youngest member of the East Kings, a notorious street gang led by a man known only as DeShawn Price, a name whispered in fear through every alley in the district, a man who had turned the streets into his empire before he was 21. But that night, something had shifted. Witnesses said the shots didn't come from a rival gang, they came from within, someone from DeShawn's own crew. By morning, DeShawn was in custody, not because of the killing, but because the cops finally had enough to charge him on a dozen counts of racketeering, drug trafficking, and assault. They raided his hideout at dawn. When they kicked in the door, DeShawn was sitting on the couch, smoking, calm as a priest before confession. As officers cuffed him, he didn't resist. He just looked at Detective Hale and said, "You think this ends with me? You don't know what's coming." Inside county lockup, DeShawn's legend grew. He ruled the prison tiers the same way he ruled the streets, through fear, loyalty, and silence. Guards called him the preacher because every Sunday he gathered inmates to talk about the code, the unspoken law of the underworld. But those sermons weren't about God, they were about power. Then, one morning, the warden received an anonymous letter. It read, "The preacher isn't preaching anymore. He's planning something." A full lockdown followed, cells searched, inmates questioned, nothing. But that same week, a prison guard was found unconscious near the chapel, keys missing, and a message scratched in the floor. Blood can wash blood. Detective Hale, now working with the prison's internal affairs team, was called in. He stared at the words and muttered, "This isn't just about revenge. He's trying to send a message." When Hale finally faced DeShawn in the interrogation room, the former kingpin was different. Quieter, older, eyes heavy with something that looked almost like regret. But as Hale prepared to leave, DeShawn leaned forward and whispered, "Detective, you're digging in the wrong place. The one you should be afraid of, he's already free." And that's when the guard burst into the room, pale as chalk. "Sir, you need to see this. The chapel's burning." The camera panned back to the prison yard, flames rising through the fog. And inside the fire's glow, a shadow walked calmly through the smoke, wearing DeShawn's uniform. But when they checked his cell, DeShawn Price was still sitting there, hands folded, smiling. The flames swallowed the prison chapel like a living creature. Sirens screamed through the cell blocks as guards rushed in, battling smoke thick enough to choke on. Inmates banged on their doors, shouting, coughing, praying. And through the chaos, someone or something moved with purpose. Security footage recovered later showed a figure in prison blues walking out of the burning chapel. Calm, steady, unharmed. The timestamp read 03:14 a.m. The footage was grainy, the face half covered in ash and light, but everyone swore it was DeShawn Price. Only one problem: DeShawn never left his cell. The door had been locked the entire time. The guard logs confirmed it. The man was inside, sitting cross-legged on the floor, whispering verses from the Book of Job when they checked. Detective Marcus Hale didn't believe in miracles. He believed in evidence, and evidence didn't lie. But the footage made no sense. The key cards used during the lockdown were traced. One guard's credentials had been used to open the chapel an hour before the fire. the same guard who was found unconscious earlier that week. His name was Officer Trent Walsh. When Hale questioned Walsh in the infirmary, the man could barely speak. His throat was raw from smoke inhalation, but he managed to rasp out 4 words. "He told me. Confess." "Who?" Hale asked. Walsh's eyes filled with tears. "The preacher." Back in isolation, DeShawn sat on his bunk, reading a small, worn Bible that looked too old to belong to him. Hale entered, placed a security photo on the table, and said, "That's you walking out of fire, isn't it?" DeShawn looked up slowly. "If I told you I've been reborn, would you believe me?" Hale frowned. "You planned that fire. Someone helped you." A faint smile crossed DeShawn's face. "Detective, when a man finally meets his truth, everything else burns away, even his sins." Hale leaned forward. "You killed your own man, didn't you? Lil J, he was your blood." Silence. Then softly, "He wanted out. I couldn't let him go. I said I'd protect him, but I became the thing he needed saving from." That night, as investigators sifted through the ashes of the chapel, they found something unexpected. A metal box buried under the altar. Inside were dozens of letters written by inmates. Each one was addressed to the same name, DeShawn Price. But the handwriting didn't match. None of them did. They belonged to different men, some serving life, some long dead. Each letter carried the same phrase at the end: "The fire will set us free."
The prison went into emergency lockdown again. The warden ordered DeShawn transferred to a federal facility upstate. But before the move, one last discovery stopped everything. The guard reviewing footage from the night of the chapel fire paused the screen at 03:15 a.m. In the corner of the frame, barely visible through the smoke, stood a man wearing a priest collar, holding the same Bible DeShawn carried in his cell. No priest had entered that prison in over a month. Detective Hale stared at the still image, pulse hammering in his throat. "If that's not him," he said quietly, "then who the hell did we just see walk out of that fire?" The next morning, a note appeared under Hale's office door. No fingerprints, no trace, just a message written in black ink. "You can't cage faith, detective. You can only test it." And attached to it, DeShawn's missing prison ID. 3 days after the chapel fire, the transfer van carrying DeShawn Price left LA County Prison at dawn. 2 guards, 1 federal agent, chains locked. Destination, Redwood Federal Correctional, 200 miles north. The trip was supposed to take 5 hours. It never arrived. By noon, the van was found abandoned under an overpass outside Bakersfield. No signs of struggle, no blood, just the rear doors hanging open and a Bible sitting in the driver's seat, pages soaked in rain. Inside the cover was a handwritten line: "Forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors." Detective Hale stood in the rain staring at the empty van. "He's gone," one officer muttered. Hale didn't answer. He knew DeShawn hadn't just escaped. He'd planned this long before the fire. That night, Hale drove back to the old East Kings territory, a place he once swore he'd never return to. The streets were quieter now, the graffiti faded, the people older. But in one alley, the same alley where Lil J had died, he saw a candle burning beside a fresh mural. The painting showed DeShawn Price, hands raised toward the sky, a halo of fire behind his head. Underneath were the words, "The preacher lives." Locals said a man had been seen preaching at a small abandoned church in Compton late at night. He talks about sin like he's seen the devil, but when he prays, people listen. The detective went there the next evening. The church was half collapsed, roof caving in, rain dripping through holes in the ceiling. The air smelled of ash and candle wax. And at the front, by the pulpit, stood DeShawn Price. No guards, no chains, just him, thinner, quieter, and somehow free. "You shouldn't be here," Hale said, hand near his holster. DeShawn smiled faintly. "Neither should you, but you came anyway." Hale stepped closer. "You killed your man. You burned that chapel. You ran, and now you're hiding behind a sermon." DeShawn shook his head. "No, detective, I'm not hiding. I'm confessing. Every man I hurt, every life I took, I carry him. But inside that prison, something changed. I saw what fire can't touch.
He reached for the Bible on the pulpit, the same one from the van, and opened it to reveal a stack of folded letters inside. "These are mine," he said. "They're from the ones who found faith before me, the ones you called criminals. They taught me something you'll never read in any report." Hale frowned. "And what's that?" "That even monsters want to be forgiven." A sudden sound cracked through the silence. A single gunshot. The window behind DeShawn shattered. Hale dropped to the floor, gun drawn. But DeShawn didn't move. He just looked down at his chest, where blood slowly spread across his shirt. Hale rushed forward, catching him as he fell. "Stay with me!" he shouted. DeShawn's lips trembled. "Tell them I finally kept my promise." He pressed the Bible into Hale's hand, then went still. The police never found the shooter, but the following week, videos began surfacing across social media, recordings of DeShawn's sermons, filmed inside the prison chapel before the fire. His words echoed through every clip. "You can't erase your past, but you can let it burn and walk through the fire, reborn." Detective Hale turned the Bible over one last time. On the inside cover, under the verse, a new message had appeared, written in the same ink as the note that had been left in his office. "Redemption isn't found in freedom. It's found in what you choose to do when you've lost it." He looked up at the flickering candles on his desk, their light reflecting off the police badge beside the book. And for the first time in years, Hale whispered a prayer, because maybe, just maybe, DeShawn Price had never escaped at all. He'd simply been set free. If that story gave you chills, wait till you hear the next one. Hit subscribe, because the next redemption story might be darker than this one.